Okay, so Sunil Bharti Mittal has, of course, been the pioneer of bringing the telecom age to India. And I think in your latest move, will also save Indians from the biggest pestilence we are facing currently, which is spam calls. So let me start with thanking you for that, Mr. Mittal.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at the Ndtv World Summit. Let's start with this topic. I think most of us have been harassed, if I may use that word, by spam calls, by messages, and it's becoming an increasing nuisance. And in the last year or so, I would say this has really picked up menacing proportions. And to that extent, some solution was much required. And we at Airtel have been working on this for a period of time. And it's hard to, balance the issue of privacy of customers, what they want to receive and what they would like to be blocked. So it's not an easy area to work on. And that's why you needed a lot of machine learning, a lot of AI at work to ensure that we are looking at patterns rather than individuals. And that's how we were able to solve the problem. And it's a completely machine-based, AI-based spam protection setup now we have. Every time you receive a call, first of all, billions of messages and calls are being stopped, which you don't even get to see, which we are 100% certain are coming from wrong places with wrong intentions. But occasionally also still, because we are learning, the machines are learning all the time, there are some suspicion or suspected calls or spam messages which come through, and they are labeled for the customer's benefit, a spam call or a spam message.
Yeah.
So that is really, to my mind, protecting our customers. And we have received tremendous response, positive response from our large customer base.
Okay, of course, that is just one of the many things Mr. Sunil Bharti Mittal has done. Recipient of India's highest civilian order, a giant in Indian industry. And today, thank you so much, Mr. Mittal, for joining us on the Ndtv World Summit. I want to start by asking you about how you look at Indian business and their role globally. For years, India has been seen as the best marketplace, a huge population, a thriving middle class, a country in which every global company wants to come and sell their product and service. But what about Indian businesses going global? Do you think the time of the Indian MNC has now come?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I grew up in the times of severe shortages and restrictions of importing stuff. Very few aspirational consumer products were being manufactured in India. Everything was being looked from outside. If you had some source of affluence, you always wanted, products which were coming from overseas. I think we have seen the transformation of this country, and increasingly so in the last decade or so under our Prime Minister's leadership. India has truly become now a place where you produce locally, you consume locally, and importantly, now you also export globally. It is only natural that given the scope and scale that India is offering, some companies will start to emerge as true global companies or multinational companies. Tatas have always been at the forefront. They took some serious early bets in the European market and a bit in Africa and South Africa mainly. In 2010, we made an audacious move to go into 15 countries in Africa. We added one more later on. We divested two. We are still in 14 sub-Saharan countries. It's perhaps one of the only branded product out of India. So you'll see Airtel in 14 countries in sub-Saharan Africa. You will see it in Sri Lanka. You will see it in Bangladesh. So we are in many countries outside India. But importantly, our latest move of taking significant stake in two European companies, Eutelsat OneWeb, which is a satellite company. We are the largest shareholder of that company, just under 25%, with the French government and the British government being the other two shareholders. And we have recently made a move on acquiring a significant stake in British Telecom, in which we have acquired 10% and waiting for the permissions to go up to 25%, which we are hopeful should happen pretty soon. So you can see the emergence of Indian companies now on global stage. And the good thing is India's money is welcome. Unlike, I would say, our neighboring country, China's investments, which are being blocked actually. And the money which is coming from the Middle East is being put through a much stronger filter because they are sovereign-backed monies. Western world prefers private sector investment, and India can offer that from here. You are seeing GMR building airports outside. You are seeing Adani now going into Kenya. You are seeing Godrej going overseas, Bajaj going outside, Hero Motors going outside. You are starting to see the emergence of global companies slowly but surely out of India now.
Yeah, so the age of the Indian MNC is soon to come. Let me come back to your foray into Africa in 2010. What was the thought behind that, and why did you look at the African continent?
Well, Africa has been almost forever a continent of hope. And you keep on, hoping that it'll get better, and you get a setback, you get better. I mean, just to give you a sense, we acquired this company in 2010 when the revenues were about $5 billion. Today, after 14 years, it's still $5 billion in dollar terms.
Oh.
But had the currencies not gone down, it would have been about $17 billion. So our assessment that there is tremendous amount of growth in Africa held out to be true. So in local currency terms, we have been growing at a rapid pace. Even now, the company is growing at over 20% year on year, which is rare anywhere in the world. Just to give you a context, Europe or UK, the companies are growing at 0.5% to maximum 1.5%. And that's why the valuations in Europe are low. In Africa, they are 20%, and India is 10-12%. But the currency depreciations have been pretty stark. So these are the geopolitical risks that Indian companies, when they go out, will look at. But we knew if we wanted our next 100 million customers, we had to go somewhere outside to a place like Africa. Today, we have nearly 160 million customers in these 14 countries. And the way population and the young people are adopting technologies, I think we will be at 250 million customers in not too distant future. And hopefully, the currencies will also start to stabilize.
Yeah. In terms of the Indian context, India has been a service-oriented economy. We are now moving to becoming a manufacturing hub. Do you think that's the game changer that India Inc. also needs to double down behind? Of course, strong policy push, but India Inc. is also coming in on that platform?
Yeah, I think manufacturing has been a focus for every country. The smallest to the largest countries have all focused on manufacturing because the political leadership recognizes that to create jobs, you really need manufacturing. And we have all seen China done it remarkably well for its large population. Now, given the context that India will have in not too distant future, we're talking about 2030, India will have 1 billion people in the working age, 1 billion people, which means great opportunities, tremendous amount of consumption, equally tremendous amount of savings. But these people need to get jobs. Now, digital will provide jobs and opportunities. NASSCOM's assessment is that we'll need 1 million people in the digital world in the next 5 years, continuously on a year-by-year basis. But that's just 5 million people. There are some other sectors, service industry, tourism, our new e-commerce type of activities, which will also generate a lot of jobs. But in the end, for any nation to really become a true economic power, you need manufacturing. And I'm so glad that finally India is getting its manufacturing piece right. The PLI, productivity linked incentive, is becoming a huge boost for the manufacturing sector. And the trusted products and services and networks, where India is saying anything that goes into the networks, the digital networks, must be trusted. And that is forcing a lot of companies to come and manufacture here in this country. Suddenly you're seeing from a net importer of mobile phones, India started to now export phones. And as our Prime Minister mentioned just last week, that India will eventually start to produce mobile phones in India, not just assembling them, but right from the semiconductor stage to the glass shells, to the entire structure of the phones and its circuitry being made in India. So you will in the next few years have a truly fully India-made mobile phones. And just an example of how manufacturing is taking place. So electronics, hardware manufacturing, software, in any case, India has been very strong.
You talked about the employment part of it. The private capex part of it also becomes very important, and that's one standard discussion which takes place every year. That is private capex coming in to the extent it does. If I were to ask you, Mr. Mittal, where do you think the animal spirits are ranking right now as far as India Inc. is concerned? with the kind of backing of policy you're seeing? What would you say?
Well, I think all the industrial players, all the corporates, I would say include the medium and small industries as well, know one thing for sure, that the consumption in this country for all the products that they're going to manufacture is only going to rise. With a billion people in the workforce, dependency going down, which means there are lots of more demand for services and products, you need scale. And for that, you need to invest. So on one hand, the government of India is encouraging massive investments in infrastructure, fully recognizing that every dollar that goes into infrastructure will yield $2.5, $3 in economic activity. And the private sector, led by, I would say, major industrial companies. My own company spends between 30 and 35,000 crores a year on digital infrastructure creation, whether it's laying up of fiber, putting up more towers, more radios, more satellite nodes, more submarine cables. And similarly, you're saying the cement, steel, automobiles, new industries like green hydrogen. So people are investing. I mean, large industrial houses are investing. Sometimes I think there's a kind of a feeling that the Indian incorporation or Indian industry is not spending enough to match the government's ambitions or aspirations. Occasionally, sometimes you have overcapacity created and then the prices fall. Right now, you're seeing in the steel industry,
Yeah.
some dumping is happening from our neighboring countries. So there's a bit of a stress there. But these are cycles which are, to my mind, short in a country like India, which has massive consumption. So I remain very hopeful that you will have very strong supply side investments coming through.
So what is the next big investment leg, Mr. Mittal? Is it satellite, enabled digital push for India? Is that the next big dream for you, what you are seeing?
Well, I have been into satellites for the last now about 4.5 years. I've been studying it. I personally feel that is truly one of the now magic bullets to cover the dark areas. We still have about 2 billion people in the world who are not connected to internet. Even in the most advanced countries like US, you have something called RDOF, which was the Rural Development Opportunity Fund created by FCC of $16 billion. I was quite surprised that there are large parts of US which still do not have high-speed broadband. And you can't reach them. It's just physically very difficult. So coming back to our country, the large swaths of Rajasthan desert, it's very hard to cover it by radio telephony. Himalayas, forests, the coastline, aviation, there are areas where mobile networks will not go, leave alone fiber. For those areas, you need satellite communications. And that, to my mind, offers now a great source of new opportunities for us mobile operators or telecom operators to put that in a mix and start to cover areas which have still left behind. India provides a very high quality signal to 95% of its population. There are 5% of people who don't get internet in the country, and they live in 25% of the area of the country. So it's a very large area with a very small population. The only way to cover that is satellite.
Okay, so right now you have roti, kapda, makan, and Wi-Fi have become the needs of the people. You're saying by bringing satellite spectrum into play, you cover this for all of India. Is that the difference that we will see?
Yeah, I think this will. I mean, right now, there's a ground station in Gujarat, in Mehsana, and in Pondicherry. There are 2 ground stations ready to start services. The day government gives us the permission, there will not be a single square inch of this country which will not have a radio coverage. So you just need to raise your hand and be connected.
So, I have to ask this question, and it's not about any one company or any one service, but why is it so difficult to have a clear telephone conversation or a mobile phone conversation without being interrupted? While we're talking about 5G, we're talking about satellite, many customers constantly complain about everyone. I'm not just pointing out one, that it's so difficult to make a call. How does that change?
Well, honestly, I've not heard this in a long time. There was a period of time that their spectrum was less. Spectrum is now in plentiful. Yes, there are still some issues about siting of towers, especially, I would say Lutyens, Delhi is one classic case where putting up towers is a real problem. For companies that spend tens of billions of dollars on spectrum and spends every year $4 to $5 billion, Putting up 2,000 sites in Delhi is a piece of cake. You can do it in 20 days. The problem is siting of towers. Please don't put up on my home or near my place or in my building, but go into somebody else's place. I mean, that's a real problem. Thankfully, the new Telecom Act provides for access to buildings, a right of way to put fiber in the hands of the mobile operators. Is it working on the ground? Not fully. NDMC, MCD, all have to be sensitized. State governments have to be sensitized. It's just putting in more infrastructure. But the good news is we have some of our friends here from the US. I was just told by our guest who just spoke before me that he pays $100 a month. And I can tell you the US services are significantly poorer than India. And you spend $2.50 a month here and you get 60 gigabytes a month. You can't use 60 gigabytes a month. I have to say, we are significantly superior than Europe, UK, US, of course, better than African continent. We are behind Japan, Singapore, Dubai. These are two city-states, and maybe certainly South Korea. These are, to my mind, are role models where the quality of mobile networks is really superior. Advantage, and I must explain this, siting is not a problem because every building is connected with a fiber. All you need to do is go and put up a street furniture, as you call it, a small little antenna in a building, connected to the fiber, and you backhaul it to the radio network. That will take some time here. We just need, as we just heard, urban infrastructure should be a plug and play. I should be able to go and put up on any street lamp a small antenna. Wherever you have a call problem of a call drop or a voice quality, plug it there, put up a small antenna, it's done. It'll take some time. But we are, honestly, I'm telling you, I'm the biggest, or rather the chief complaint officer of my company. There's a person sitting in my car. Whenever the call is not going through well, he makes a note. By the evening, we try to resolve it. There's not a single dinner I go to where somebody tells me, my phone is not working in my third basement. Third basement. I'm saying, you pay me $2.50. Okay, I'll still attempt to do it. I mostly get to the second basement, I can tell you, but sometimes I don't get to the third basement.
Sir, just talking about the $2.50, tariff hikes were taken, but do we need more?
After that, we are at $2.50 after the tariff hike. So you can imagine what we have been suffering for a long time. Ideally, $5, not 50 or 100. But that is where we need to get to buy more spectrum, put more investment in infrastructure. I am telling you, we heard our Honorable Prime Minister this morning, this country's future is resting on digital infrastructure.
Yes.
The wonderful DPI that the Prime Minister spoke about today is truly a gift to every citizen of this nation, and hopefully that can be lifted and shifted to Africa and other developing countries. UPI, direct benefit transfers, Aadhaar-based identification, all this is creating wonderful magic. Just imagine these phones in the hands of villagers who are connected to the world now on high-speed data, paying a very small amount of money. We really need to create a first-rate infrastructure here, continue to invest in it, and if that means crowdsourced another $0.50 or $1 from each customer in the country, trust me, it's worth it because we will build the same networks as you see in Japan and Singapore right here in this country.
How does that happen then? How do you think 2.5 will go to $5? Is the appetite there? I think the last tariff hike was well taken. Do you see more coming anytime soon?
So at some point in time, my view is yes, because in the end, current ARPUs are lower than 2016. Add to that all the inflation of electricity, fuel prices, compensation salaries, just basically cost of running any business. We have not even caught up with the inflation. I mean, if you go to UK, what has the Ofcom done? There's a price set, and after that, they're saying you can keep on increasing every year with the inflation. That's what all the companies do. We have been going back in our tariffs. So coming back a little bit at some point in time will be valid, very valid.
I want to switch to a bigger vision, and we spoke in detail about telecom sector and, of course, what Bharti Airtel is doing, the groundbreaking moves. I come back to congratulating you on the use of AI to stop spam. But I want to come to you on the kind of impact policy push has for industry. And I ask you from the point of view of something that you have experienced yourself. And you've spoken about this. When in the 80s, suddenly overnight, a business you were in no longer existed because of a change in policy. Do you think India Inc. today feels more secure that such changes will not happen? Because the last thing business wants is instability.
Yeah, I think policy predictability is required for any investor, both foreign and domestic. Uh, in the last 10 years, we have seen only more solidifying of policy making, stability of policy making, and in fact, in our industry, which had plethora of regulations, have all been simplified. Today, doing telecom business is much, much easier from the regulatory standpoint as it was some years back. In fact, in 2020, when the industry almost came on its knees, 8 large operators shut down their shop in India. The government of India quickly moved and ushered in a major reform in the telecom industry, where they removed multiplicity of permissions. For every tower, you had to have 40 permissions at that time, all gone. Licensing for import of equipment, all gone. Bank guarantees, 80% of them gone. And there were a lot of simplification done. So I would say the investors, both domestic and international, can take a lot of comfort that this government genuinely means ease of doing business. And for that, one of the pillars is policy predictability, which we are seeing strengthening year by year.
You talked about a time when there were 8 telecom players. We're down to 3 now. I'm very tempted to ask you, Mr. Mittal, do we need 3?
Yeah, I have always maintained that for a large country like India, 3 private sector plus 1 public sector is the right structure of the industry in the marketplace. And I hope it stays that way.
Yeah. I want to come to you on the bit about AI, and we touched about it briefly in the context of one, scheme. But AI is a very controversial sort of a movement. There are those that believe it can do more harm than good, and those who believe in its power. I was wondering how you see use cases in India, and how do you use them in your own business?
Well, any technology, when it's brought in, has its pluses and minuses. AI is now a reality. It's been going on for a long period of time. Without us knowing, AI was at work behind the scene on our mobile phones, looking at our patterns of spending, our movements, our travel, our sites that we visit. And it was trying to do a lot of stuff at the background without us knowing. Now, what you see is AI right in front and center of yourself. More importantly, the advent of generative AI and the AGI is coming through. Now, the world going forward, which I would say we will see the early signs of it, and our children will see a lot more of that. They live in that universe. AI is going to be one of the most important, drivers of the world's economies, of the world's politics, geopolitics, stresses amongst nations in the world. AI is going to be at the forefront. AI-led, efficiencies that are being brought into the companies will have its challenges for certain workforce, but new job opportunities will be created. Will there be misuse of AI? Certainly there will be. We will have to be more vigilant. Just on this, as we do it for cybersecurity, AI will pose new challenges. AI will need to be looked through the lens of the regulators as well from time to time. Nation states will have to build guardrails. I can give you one personal example. Just not too long ago, one of my senior finance persons in Dubai, which handles our Africa headquarters, got a call in my voice, my tone, directing for a money transfer, a fairly large amount of money. And he was sensible. He immediately realized that I wouldn't call anybody in my company to make that kind of a deal. But when I heard that, voice recording, I was quite stunned. It was perfectly articulated as I would speak. And anybody who would have not been vigilant may have done something about it.
That's incredible.
And so you will have now.
Did you track down where it came from? Was it possible to do that?
We put our complaints and all to the police and all that, but I'm sure this is now a daily routine. One will have to be vigilant. Tomorrow you will see not just a voice, you will probably see your digital signatures, you'll see your face on a Zoom call. All these things will have to be protected. I mean, we'll have to protect our societies from the evils of AI. And yet we have to use the goodness of AI, because those companies, nations that will not adopt AI will be left behind. So this is a conundrum for every time you get a new technology into place. There are pluses and minuses. I remain very optimistic about the benefit of AI that the human race will achieve and be able to do jobs which are otherwise very difficult to perform.
What is the use case you have found for AI in your businesses, and have you found it replacing human jobs in any of the functions? For example, customer complaint, etc.
Yeah, I would say routine, mundane, repetitive jobs are certainly going to be under straight threat. And we are already seeing in our company, we are making huge efficiencies through the adoption of AI, which means reduction of people. But equally, new jobs are coming through,
To
which
what extent, if I may ask, reduction of people?
it depends. I mean, in the call center, as you said, there's going to be a big change. In our workforce management, there's going to be a big change. I mean, just go back in time. I mean, just 10 years back, every time a customer had to be onboarded onto a mobile phone, there was a physical form to be filled
Yes.
up. There were runners on scooters and mobiles who would take those forms to a different center. From there, they would fax into another place. I mean, in 10 years' time, I mean, that it seems like a joke today, you see. Similarly, you'll go 10 years forward, some of these repetitive jobs will disappear. But have we suffered on account of the earlier adoption of electronic medium? We have not. We've added more jobs in different spaces, different parts. So I remain hopeful. There'll be new ideas, new thoughts that'll come through, which will create new businesses and new jobs.
What, in your view, is the next groundbreaking innovation that is going to come from India and make an impact on a global scale, Mr. Mittal? We are very good at adopting global technology. We do it at a lower cost. We're known for that. But what do you think is the innovation that will now come from here as we move into India's century?
I think India, because of again, it's a very large workforce which is developing here, right here. We will be serving the world right from here. And I heard Commerce Minister talking about gone are the times when we were clamoring from H-1B visas. We'll do a lot of stuff from here because now the digital world allows you, now the AI allows you to actually serve the globe right here from India without displacing people. And our frugal innovations in the area of especially digital field and also biosciences is going to serve the world. So DPI, for example, I think the whole world, especially the global south, is clamoring now to pick up India's DPI, make them fit for their own countries, and start to launch it there. India will have tremendous amount of work coming through for intermediate companies, software companies, system integrators who will go and put up these DPI stacks in country after country in Africa and many other parts of the world. Similarly, our health and biosciences, I think that frugal innovation that is happening here, where the cost of medicine, the cost of healthcare will be lowered for the entire globe, will also be here. Last, I would say, India, despite being a developing nation, has been at the forefront of space technology. We make our own rockets, we launch our own rockets, we make our own satellites.
Yes.
I think that's another area where India will take a pole position.
And just last question to you, Mr. Mittal, because I know you're on a tight schedule. What is exciting Sunil Mittal now? What is the next project or the next interesting idea that has you excited about getting up every day?
Well, I think we started with that. We need to take India to the globe. We have to showcase the Indian work culture, the Indian ethos, India's commitment. And I think that's what I am currently busy with. We are expanding in Airtel into all the Bharti enterprises into the global markets. We are moved into the UK. We will look at other opportunities around the globe and take the best from India and showcase it across the globe.
So you're truly taking the Indian business ethos global. Thank you so much, Mr. Mittal, for joining us.